On a lazy afternoon, I found myself lounging with my roommate, Jake. We had been friends since high school and used to be gym buddies. However, as we gazed at the screen of our video game, it was clear that our once-toned bodies were now out of shape. Neglecting our workouts and healthy diets, we had resorted to living off of junk food. After hours of playing Grand Theft Auto, we both came to the realization that we couldn't sustain ourselves on just soda and chips anymore. I suggested to Jake that we go to our local diner for some real food. He agreed, knowing that our current diet was far from ideal. Jake worked part-time at a nearby 7-Eleven while I worked from home as a call center representative. We grabbed our wallets and headed out, deciding to walk in an attempt to make up for our lack of physical activity. As we strolled, we chatted about life, or rather, our lack thereof. Jake's girlfriend had cheated on him with a wealthy man last year, but he still managed to charm other women with his words despite no longer having six-pack abs. I, on the other hand, had never had a girlfriend due to my fear of rejection. My one attempt at asking someone out ended disastrously and left me with no desire to try again. As we reached 33rd Street, I noticed a figure in a hoodie trailing behind us. They seemed too close for comfort, so I whispered to Jake to let them pass us. We paused momentarily to let the person go ahead, but they stopped right next to us. It was hard to see their face behind the mask and hood. Sensing the tension between Jake and the hooded stranger, I intervened and politely asked the man to let it go. I patted Jake's shoulder as a signal for him to back down and not engage. Thankfully, he listened and we continued on our way. However, the figure continued to follow us, so we quickened our pace. After a few more minutes, they were no longer in sight. We had finally arrived at the diner, greeted by the familiar smell of the DJ Diner Burger. Memories flooded back as I remembered Jake and I coming here frequently during high school. Our old spot was still empty, so we settled in. We ordered our usual meal, 6 pieces of drumstick chicken and a chocolate milkshake, just like we used to when we were teenagers. Our conversation drifted to simpler times, back when we were just naive teenagers in high school. I shared with him the struggles of being bullied and how he always stood by my side, a loyal friend and protector. As we reminisced, I couldn't help but feel grateful for his constant support. Eventually, I made the decision to join his gym, eager to try out his love for weightlifting and boxing. Despite his efforts to train me, I could never quite match his skill level. Each time I stumbled during our boxing sessions, he would urge me on with a firm, "Don't give up." And when I struggled to finish my final bench press, he would push me with a determined "one more." After indulging in some more lighthearted banter, we agreed it was time to head home and continue our walk down memory lane along the way. The evening air was cool and crisp, setting the perfect backdrop for our nostalgic chat. As we walked, Jake's arms suddenly jerked in pain. I saw a small object embedded in his skin, and my heart raced with fear. I couldn't make out what it was, but Jake's numbness and drowsiness were alarming signs. "We need to get home now," I urged, quickening our pace. But just a few blocks away, I felt a heavy blow to the back of my head and everything went black. When I came to, I heard Jake shouting for me to get up. My vision blurred as I saw him fighting off a hooded figure, his blood staining the pavement beneath us. "Get up and run," he yelled, his voice thick with desperation. Trembling with fear and adrenaline, I managed to dial 911, only to be told to stay hidden until help arrived. But how could I when my friend needed me? Desperately, I searched for anyone who could assist us, but the streets were eerily empty. Feeling desperate and out of options, I hastily grabbed a rock and a tree branch before sprinting back to Jake. But as I approached, my heart sank. My heart stopped as I saw Jake lying on the ground, a sprawling mess of blood and stab wounds. I sprinted towards him, trying to contain my panic. "Stay with me, Jake," I shouted, kneeling beside him. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone and dialed 911, praying for help to arrive in time. But as I looked into his pale face, all hope seemed lost. He was barely conscious and fading fast. I frantically tried to reassure him that help was coming, but deep down I feared it might be too late. He slumped against the wall, gasping for air as blood poured from multiple stab wounds. Through tears and pain, he fumbled with his shirt to try and stop the bleeding. "Took you long enough," his friend said with a smirk, not realizing how serious the situation was. I pressed my hand against one of the wounds, trying to stop the bleeding, but it was no use. Jake noticed the blood from my head injury I sustained earlier and grabbed his handkerchief to wipe my face. "Dry your face, you noob," he joked weakly. I reassured him that help was on the way, but he didn't seem convinced. "Don't give up," he muttered, his eyes growing lifeless as he spoke. "I'll cherish every moment we've had together." Tears welled up in my eyes as I watched him slip away. After a few moments, the blaring of sirens pierced through the air. Help had finally arrived, but it was too late for my friend. I watched as they covered his body and loaded him into the ambulance. The perpetrator in the hood escaped, leaving us with no closure or justice. Despite promises of an investigation, months have passed with no updates on the case. Now, I spend my days alone at home, with no friends or social life to speak of. The absence of my dear friend Jake is felt deeply, as every day without him is a reminder of what was taken away. Memories of our laughter and adventures flood my mind, making me long for his presence once more. But all I can do now is hold on to those memories and hope for some closure in this tragedy.